get started. How's everyone going? How's everyone doing?
Good.
Good. So my name's Chase, organizer for those of you that don't know me. 2019 grad, was on the football team here. Defensive tackle, it was about 60 pounds ago, but defensive tackle. And came back because about 2 years ago, I accepted a position at an independent RIA firm that's associated with Magnus, where Michael's right now. And basically we are a registered investment advisory firm, and we do financial planning. And so the idea came to me because I've been reaching out to multiple groups to teach financial literacy. And so I wanted to come back and offer this education to my fellow teammates, my fellow Cornell athletic department. So that's kind of the purpose of it all today. I'm excited to give you, one, the whole outline of the presentation is what we're actually going to be presenting to the athletes, with a couple little details trickled in that are going to be actually important for you guys as well. So whenever you see a red screen, the student athletes are not going to see that. So like for instance, for example, estate planning, right? Kids 22 right after graduation probably don't even know what a will is or power of attorney or anything else like that. So that's more just for information for you guys, right? So we're going to give it to you as if you are the students, and then almost like step away and be like, all right, this slide's for you guys, kind of thing. Any questions before we get going? No? Maybe you want to introduce yourself too? Also, didn't I introduce Michael Tanny, my senior advisor? He's here to help me, and I'm really excited to be looping him in with his knowledge, and he's going to really elevate the conversation.
I hate when you call me senior advisor.
Why?
Because I have this love-hate relationship. I always try to look older because people just inherently trust you more if you're older, right? But I also don't want to look old. So you call me senior, and I have this little beard, right? Baby beard, as my kids call it, just to look a little older. So anyway, I'm not that senior. Nice to meet you all. Good morning. My name is Michael Tanny. Quick background. I did not go to Cornell University. I did not play football, in case you weren't sure. I am from a place called Rockland County, New York, so just outside New York City. I went to school in Indiana, Bloomington, and came back, worked at Goldman Sachs for about a decade in wealth management, left, started my own firm, and we'll talk a little bit more about the differences between a number of these firms to help educate you and understand where we're coming from. But the bottom line is I've come from the big company, and now we're in the smaller, medium-sized realm, and what we can do and help people is much different and much more impactful. So I thank you for coming today, and if you have any questions at any point during the presentation, we would prefer this to be interactive, so just ask. If there's something specific that's personal, feel free to ping us afterwards. We're going to be on campus the next 2 days, so just please don't be shy. That's really the takeaway is you're not going to remember everything we talk about. Same thing with the students tomorrow. But hopefully one or two pieces of nuggets of information carry with you and make a difference. So.
Awesome. So let's jump into it. So right off the bat, what to expect, right? So actually understanding what are the four major things we're going to be talking about. The whole goal is to, the concept of financial education is intended. 4 years ago when I was in this position, these seats, I was probably the worst in the group, right? And my passion was to make my greatest weakness my greatest strength. And so we've been trying to whittle down this huge mammoth of information into four major steps that after graduation, all young 20-year-olds should really be focusing on, right? Those four major things are, next slide. One, create an emergency fund. We're gonna break down all these too, so if some of the terms aren't familiar, don't worry, we'll get to them. Two, create a wealth investment account. Three, grow a Roth IRA. And four, lock in your insurability status. Those are the four major things that, in my opinion, when people have that little extra savings in their young 20s, build the strongest foundation possible for the years to come. Let's get into them.
So, disclosure. Disclosure is that we're here to help you. We're not here to sell you anything. Same thing with the students. As I mentioned, I was at Goldman, and I'm not picking on Goldman because they're good or bad. It's just a representative of a certain type of the industry. But there's two different ways people can work with you in a professional capacity in personal finance. There's the broker, which is one side, and there's the independent advisor, the other side. We are independent advisors. And the major difference when you think about it is that we don't have shareholders who demand quarterly earnings. We don't have sales quotas. So we don't get compensated based on the advice we give, meaning if there's a specific execution vehicle that we choose to use, we think it's in your best interest. We don't get paid differently. So all the advice that we're going to suggest today, all the tips, recommendations, they're genuine. We're sitting on the same side of the table as you. We treat you and your money as if it was our own. And the idea is that there's no taking advantage, there's no calculations and combinations of why we're doing certain things other than we think they're in your best interest. Did you have a question? No, I got overly excited. I was like, yes, so early.
Not yet.
Okay, cool.
If anyone noticed too, there was that little bit of fun animation, right? The curtains.
Yeah, that's good.
Basically, that is an indicator of, hey, one of 4 is coming up, right? We talked about how we're going to give the 4 major things. So if you ever see those curtains, that's just a little refresher. Hey, one of the 4 things is coming up. So the first one, grow an emergency fund. What is an emergency fund? It's basically just cash on hand, right? So when we start to really save up money, when we start to plan for the future, we want to have something that we can fall back on, right? And that's what we want to build is 4 to 6 months of our monthly expense, right? God forbid something happens, you have 4 to 6 months to figure it out. So giving us a real life example, right? Something that especially nowadays the students can relate to. Right? COVID affected us all in a different way, right? Majority of people here, it cut off your season, right? Made you stay at home for about a year and a half. For people who graduated my year, they were about 8 to 9 months in their industry. First job ever. And when production started coming down, when just the world looked different, the first kind of people to get cut were the new people, right? They wanted to keep on their senior experience, and they had to cut something, so they cut what they first brought on. I had a bunch of friends right out of college who had 6 months, 7 months where they couldn't find a job. That's what the emergency fund's for. Those situations where no one anticipated COVID, no one could really plan for it, but you need to have something to fall back on. God forbid it does happen, right? You don't want to be these guys just living off your parents for the next 30 years.
Or the opposite, if you really hack the system, right?
True. They lived a good life. Made a song, made a record label, all of it was really good. How do we create that 4 to 6 months, right? Creating a budget. If the number one thing that our student athletes take away from this meeting is understanding where their money is actually going, what's actually coming in, where is it actually all going, that's a win on the day. It's the foundation of everything. We can give you, hey, when you have savings, you should put it here, you should put it here, but if they can't create savings, knowing exactly where everything's going, then the foundation's lost, right? So that's the number one thing we want them to understand, just simply how to create a budget, how to manage where my money's going. And we're gonna give them some tools to do that.
We actually find that often students don't even realize that if they signed up for a salary, let's pick an even number for the sake of easy math. I always try to make it easy. So let's just assume they make $100,000, which is a tremendously good salary. They gotta pay taxes. They're not actually earning $100,000, right? What's the actual net to them before anything else? And especially with athletes, ones who sign major contracts, they forget about that. They think they got X dollars, but they forgot they got to pay taxes, they got to pay the agent, they got to pay the manager. There's a lot of drag in there. You're not seeing nearly that whole amount, and a lot of people get in trouble really fast in the beginning. So to Chase's point, having a budget, understanding that the amount you earn is not necessarily the amount you keep, and the amount you keep is not necessarily the amount you net after you have to spend on certain living. So it's important to have an idea of where your money's going, how it's going, and as you earn more money, how you can continue to save and do the right thing for your future.
This slide. Don't try to write down numbers or anything like that. Basically what this is showing you is one of the tools we're going to provide to not only you guys, but to all the student athletes as well. We created a quick, easy spreadsheet that just gives a bunch of different areas to get the mind thinking about it, right? We gave you a bunch of different options, areas to add additional ones, whatever it is, but it will just help you to map out, oh, I do spend money on subscriptions. Oh, I do want to plan for my clothing and my dry cleaning because it's $50 a month, whatever it is. It will help them to actually outline, what do I actually spend on a monthly basis? The Excel spreadsheet, the tool that we made, is pretty robust, and you can use it for a lot of different things, but if a bare minimum, they just use it for the budgeting sheet, again, that's a win on the day, right?
When we meet with the established people, established professionals, this is the most painful part of our exercise. It's going through this, because most people have never done it. You know, whether it's an aversion to it, or a laziness, or not wanting to really see. I always call it the cleaning and organizing the sock drawer, right? It really, really stinks and it's painful, but when it's done, you're really happy and pleased, but then you gotta stay on top of it, and most of us can't do that. But phase one is just understanding what's in your sock drawer, right? Before you can even organize the socks and get rid of the ones where the sock monster has never given them back, right? We all have a sock monster, don't we?
I've got 5 of them. I got 5 singles in there. Can't figure.
I have 2, and I'm missing more than 2 socks, so I'm not sure what's going on.
I know we're beating a dead horse with that, but again, it is the foundation, right? It's the number one most important thing that they can take away. Also, if anyone saw that fun animation again, right? It's not one of the major 4 things, but we wanted to include other really good additional tips that just they should be focusing on, right? So for instance, starting to build credit. I know there's a lot of people, even in the stage what, that have not started a credit card, right? And that is a mistake. We need to start working towards building credit, building that label of ourselves, because it's going to become a really important factor later on in life when we start applying for mortgages, when we start applying for loans. We need to start earlier rather than later. That's going to be a big major thing. Start earlier rather than later, right? Quick breakdown and also just helping people understand how is my credit actually built, right? 35% of it is determined on your payment history. Just don't be late. Figure out a monthly basis, just pay it off every single time. That will help to really build up your credit. Amount owed, don't let it build. The overarching idea is create consistent, small payments, right? That's how you build really good credit. That's how you get above 800, right? And the last one that, again, the student athletes will be able to actually affect is this one right here, the short-term debt. Don't open up multiple credit cards. Every single new credit card is viewed as a new source of debt, right? So you want to get maybe 1 or 2, diversify a little bit, but then be consistent and keep it small and just build it. That's the best way for young people to build credit cards. Now for some people in this room, different kinds like your mortgages, everything like that, that'll help to build it up. The length of credit history, just if you've been doing it for 20 years, it's better than the guy who's been doing it for 2 years. That's just the bottom line, but also athletes won't be able to really control that factor.
A random question. Just a show of hands, how many people here have a credit card? 1 credit card.
1.
Good.
This one.
How many people have 2? 3? 4? You can see how very easily you can start accumulating cards. Some of you more than others, but you get the point. It's pretty easy, right, when you're not paying attention, especially when they have good teasers, right? There's something you're going to buy. Sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it makes sense, but you just always have to reconcile, because at the end of the day, when you look back and go back to that dirty or unorganized sock drawer, it starts to accumulate.
One more little quick thing. Oh, yeah, question? Definitely.
Is it a positive or negative impact on your credit if you pay your balance in full each month?
No. No. If you pay on you want consistency, but on a monthly basis, that's a good frequency. You know, but honestly, you want to build not too much. You don't want 10,000 sitting in your credit, right? But if you have somewhere in that 500 to 2,000 range, that they show good consistency of medium-sized payments, that's good.
I'm going to answer it slightly, because I think there's an underlying question there. Is it better for your credit history to have a little bit of debt at all times, or should you always be flush? That's sort of what you're asking?
I mean, if you pay it off every month, the company's not making any money on you.
Correct. They are fronting you the money, and not only that, but you're actually hopefully making money because you have a cash back card, you get some points.
Right. Right.
That's the game. They are willing to bet that the majority of people won't be able to do it. So to answer your question slightly differently, they look at your debt to income ratio when it comes to the credit history and your ability to pay, your ability to service the debt. You are not advantaged to carry debt outside of, let's say, a mortgage, right? So a credit card, there's no advantage to kicking the credit card debt out a year and just paying the minimum. It does not help you. It'll actually hurt you, because bottom line is you're spending more in interest than it's worth. And the credit card company's winning. So always, if you can, always pay your credit card off.
Good question. And the last little thing too, there's going to be some slides in here that I know a lot of people brought notepads, which is amazing. There's going to be some slides that don't write it down, right? We're going to be providing this entire PowerPoint, 2 other additional tools that you can come back and reference, right? So these links will be in it. You can go Like for instance, running the credit report. It's very simply how it is. It's just what is my credit? What is affecting my credit? Going to these 3 different sources will outline everything that actually affects your credit. So that's a good resource to have on hand. But again, we give it to you guys after the presentation.
And this is free. This used to cost money. You know, rewind 10 plus years ago, before the credit crisis, before 08, 09. If you wanted to see what your credit report was before you went to apply for something, let's say you were going to buy a home and you weren't sure your credit history and your credit report and level, you would go to one of these places and they would charge you. And I'm not 100% sure exactly the politics behind it, but essentially the laws changed and said everyone's entitled, I believe, once a year to check their credit report for free. So I don't know if that means you can click on all 3 and run all 3 for free, but I know for sure that you can click on one and they should all relatively be the same. There shouldn't be any surprises. So I encourage you, even if you have no issues or you're not looking to borrow money, once a year just spot check it, just purely for identity fraud and theft, and just make sure it looks okay to you, because sometimes there are things happening behind the scenes and you have no idea.
I've been told that if you run your credit like multiple times, that it affects your credit score negatively. Is that true?
It depends on what you're doing and how you're doing it. Yes, if you're checking it daily,
Well, yeah.
it's triggering something. And again, they may start charging you.
Right.
But one-off, so like for example, going back to the credit card, if you apply for a credit card, they do a credit check, right? It's equivalent of a soft credit check. They're not doing like a hardcore criminal history. They're just making sure, you know, no skeletons in the closet financially. One-off doesn't impact you. But if you all of a sudden start applying for a number of cards, they're going to see that something's going on, right? And that's where your credit history or your credit score could get hurt. But on a one-off basis, there's no impact at all.
So like, if you, like you said, doing this once a year, like would not affect your credit
No,
score?
it's actually healthy. I think it's a safe thing to do. It's a smart thing. It's like checking the batteries in your smoke alarm, right? Just, what's the harm?
1 to 2 times.
And I will just add that some of these credit bureaus are not on top of their data. Mine recently was telling me how I can pay off my Toyota Avalon, which I got rid of 7 years ago. So I'm serious, they really are sometimes not good, so you gotta at least check once a year, because I've had to write in and tell them, I sold my house a year and a half ago. I don't have a Toyota Avalon anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I'm surprised how clueless some of them are. So you gotta at least check once a year.
You make a valid point, because, and that's kudos to you for doing that, because if you hadn't, and let's just say you sold your house, you're renting, and all of a sudden next year you decide to buy another place, and you go to buy it and they say, well, we're actually not approving you for the full mortgage because you have this Toyota Avalon or a second mortgage or something. And all of a sudden you're on a tight timeline. It screws everything up, like the worst time to have to fix this thing. And by the way, they don't move very quickly.
No, they don't.
You know the DMV sloth kind of, you know, that's basically what you're dealing with, right? They're not incentivized to move fast. So proactive is the name of the game, and I appreciate you sharing your story, and thankfully it wasn't a bad ending.
Once a year helps keep you on track and keep them on track. One more financial health alert. Right? Refinancing your student loans, which is most likely going to be on every single one of their mind, right? Basically, when you're looking at it, you have the federal loans or private loans. Right now, federal is frozen until next year, right around February, March. There's no reason to replace it. There's no reason to refinance, because you're not getting better than zero, right? End of the day, when you're determining whether or not you want to refinance, you have to evaluate, one, the baseline of it all, interest rate. If I can get a lower interest rate, fantastic, right? But if you're switching from a federal to a private, just be wary of federal has certain benefits. You can reschedule how you're going to pay it. You could make it based off your income. There are a lot of, this whole conversation could be another hour presentation. We have some sources here at the bottom that will help you look through it. Private to private, just focus on the interest rate. But if you're going from federal to what the government's been giving you to private, just be wary. Again, think about this past year. All federal loans were frozen. People didn't have to pay them. Private kept going. So even though you might get down 1% better, it's fantastic, but the federal has more options tied within it, right? So just think about all those different factors as you're going through. A lot of them are outlined in those tabs. All right, red screen, just for you guys. We're not telling this to the students.
So same concept with student loans, which you may very well have, and there's no shame in having them. A lot of people have them until literally they die because there's an advantage of just letting them run out, depending on the income-based repayment schedules and such. But if you're buying a home, or you own a home, or an apartment, you can refinance your mortgage too. Same concept. And the game is very simple. It's pure math, right? There's no emotion involved. They don't care about you, and you don't care about them. Literally, right? This is a numbers game. You just go to the lowest bidder, in this case, because you want to pay the least amount possible. And go to whomever you want. You could go to a Rocket Mortgage, which is Quicken, right? So just do it on the internet, and then they go from there. You can go to local, Jeff Bank or whatever is nearby here. Doesn't matter. Whomever's giving you the best terms really is all that matters, because at the end of the day, sub a certain amount, the federal government buys all these loans anyway. So literally, you're just paying a bank temporarily before they sell your loan to the government. So you don't care who the bank is, right? As long as they don't lose your check, right? Make sure it's a legit bank. But at the end of the day, the bank's just making a calculated bet on you. They're saying, are you going to pay me or not? And is your house worth enough that if you don't pay me, even though I don't really want to be in the business of owning your house, I'll just buy your house. Or not buy it, I'll take it over, because that's the collateral, and I'll just go dump it and get my money back. So if you're in a situation, I would say that if you're paying at least, right now with the interest rates, if you're paying at least 3.75% or higher on a 30-year fixed mortgage, which means you have a loan out for 30 years, I would say it's worth exploring a refinance. Doesn't mean it always makes sense. Depends on where in the duration of that 30 years you are. Depends on when you're going to move to your next home or not. There are other considerations, but on a pure black and white perspective, somewhere around 3.75 and higher, you should call the bank and say, maybe we should talk.
On average, if you're going to be in your home for more than 7 years and your rate is 3.75 or above, just check out your options. That's a good rule of thumb for today's market. If you're in your house for more than 7 years and you're above currently 3.75.
What's the number for 15-year loan?
15 years lower, I think that, rates have moved a lot in the last couple months. It's getting a little bit more technical, and I'm sure none of you want to have an economics class this morning. This is already daunting enough. I would say, off the top of my head real quickly, I've been seeing mid-twos. So I'd say anything above 3%, that 15-year fixed, it's worth at least sniffing around. The 15 years is a little more sensitive because you're paying more principal up front. So if you're X number of years in, you may not be worth switching over, right? There's always a fee associated with these refinancing. No one's doing this for free, right? Everyone's got their hand in the cookie jar somewhere. And the bottom line is, and this is where Chase and I become helpful for a lot of our clients, is just doing the math, right? Is it worth sharing the cookie jar, right? At the end of the day, are you better off or not? And if the numbers are pretty close, sometimes just let it be, right? Pay a little extra on your own on the side, because there's nothing wrong with that either. And you just calculate it. It's purely a game.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, think about a bank. A bank is a business, right? The money you have in your bank, they're using that money to go invest in other stuff. Could be stocks, bonds, other real estate. That's what they do, right? That's how they make their money. So, the whole idea is, well, how do you claw some of that back for you, right? Run your balance sheet like a business a little bit. Take advantage of exactly what's available. So there's one other thing that we wanted to include in this presentation. As Chase mentioned, there's a red background, so it's just for here. I don't know how many of you have children or have families. I'm going to assume the percentage is a lot higher than when we talk to the students. This is just a really good cheat sheet of some options you have to help just think through, some family financial planning, right? How do you kind of take advantage in a way of making sure you can start backing up the truck on your children? It doesn't mean you give them $1 gazillion tomorrow, but what are some tools, right? And all of you here have a distinct, tremendous advantage when it comes to college education, because we know Cornell helps subsidize some, if not most, or even in some cases all. So maybe college savings is not literally as important, but there's still going to be some expenses. They're eventually going to want to have a house. They may need a car, right? There's clearly other things that will happen in their life. And there are a lot of really good tools out there. So I could spend an hour just on the pros and cons of each of these. But the bottom line is that we wanted to show you real quickly, and Chase can point, there's two columns. When you are applying for college and you fill out the FAFSA form, they do want to know what kind of assets the child has and what kind of assets you have. And there are ways to put money away for your child, 100%, as I say, kosher, 100% legal, where they don't show up on that FAFSA form, which increases the odds of aid and scholarship and such. There are also ways you can put money away where they will see it. It's not that one's better or worse than the other. It's just, as an educated consumer, you have to understand the pros and cons of each and which make the most sense to you. So for example, I'll just give you one and then we'll move on. Chase, if you look at the 529 account, which is in the middle, they don't care about the income, but the 529 balance does go towards the student's ability or your ability to pay for college, which directly reduces what they're willing to give you. Because at the end of the day, college, I have a master's in higher education, so I'm very pro-education, but they're also businesses, right? They're not going to give out more than they need to, unless you really force their hand. So the 529 is a great way in New York to save money, because it's a tax deduction immediately. The money grows tax-free, as long as it's used in the future for qualified educational expenses. That could be grad school, it could be undergrad, and it's transferable. So if your children wind up going to Cornell, and it's 100% free, but your grandchildren who don't exist yet go somewhere else, well, you can always use that money for them. So this is a larger play than just saving a couple of dollars today in taxes. There's a lot of other benefits. And as I mentioned before, it grows tax-free. So you could have a 60, 70-year legacy of tax-free growth for a generation that you don't know exists yet. So it's really powerful planning tools that don't require, again, a gazillion-dollar deposit tomorrow. You could put $100 away a month kind of thing. It really makes a difference.
The one quick note on the 529 plans, he was saying tax-free, tax-deferred, all those different things. They have to be specifically used for educational expenses. And I know the majority of us know that. So when he was saying if your children don't use it, maybe a good idea to plan for the grandchildren, a legacy plan almost. It's because if you want to pull it out or use it for anything else, there will be penalties, there will be tax, right? So keeping in mind that 529, great benefits, all this tax-free, but it's meant for college, it's meant for education. So plan accordingly for that, with how much you're putting in.
And one other one I'll just allude to really briefly is the top one. And I'm going to go to the third / life insurance. There are two types of life insurance, and I think we're going to touch upon this a little bit later in the presentation. But essentially, one of them is rental, one of them is ownership. And we'll go into more detail. But the one that's ownership, the money actually accumulates. The money you put in actually grows. You can never lose it, literally. Now, of course, the insurance company is investing it, just like I talked about. The bank is making their money. You know, no free lunch. But that money that accumulates is not considered part of FAFSA. So a lot of people look at that as a great opportunity to put money away in this forced savings plan that doesn't directly impact their children's ability to get aid or scholarship. Yet it's available, it can be used for any reason. There are no rules, literally, other than the max amount you can borrow tax-free. So those are very technical things, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but just know there are a lot of options out there for you, and they're very, very impactful long-term, and they have both near and long-term benefits for both you and your potential future generations. So it's just important to know that the suggestions and tips we're talking about, they really have cascade effects, bigger than we can even imagine.
All right, let's refresh it a little bit, right? We're about halfway through the presentation. That's also a good reminder for Tanny and I. We need to get our giddy up a little bit, but saw the curtains open, so we're done with the first one, right? And again, recap, creating a budget, right? The foundation of it all. So number 2, grow a wealth investment account. Really quickly, wealth investment account is just the way we describe an individual account. Think of Robinhood, right? That's probably the most pertinent that a lot of these generations are going to think about. Robinhood, just pump money in, puts it in the market, and you can access it at any time. That's what we're talking about. We had first just money that's sitting for us, fully acceptable. Now we have money that's working for us, but also fully accessible. We'll keep getting down the ladder. So why invest, right? Simple question is just you want money that's continuously growing, not just sitting for you. And we're going to get into what does sitting versus working actually mean, right? But we want money that is constantly exposed to the market. So let's keep going. So exactly. So money sitting versus money working. And the real quick explanation is I'm going to give out two terms: sitting, inflation; working, compounding. And we're going to explain exactly what each of those mean, right? So inflation. The value of the dollar isn't the same across time, right? Think back in the 1920s how $5 bought a lot compared to what it buys today. Shoot, back in the early 2000s, $5 got you an actual Subway footlong, right? Now you have to pay like $12.50 or whatever it is, right? There's value of money changes. Back in 1960, 9 cents bought you a whole quart of milk. Back in 1966, 9 cents then bought you a glass. Back in 2017, it now bought you 7 tablespoons of milk. Today it's probably going to buy you a fragrance whiff of milk. You know, you just get a little splash.
Evaporated.
Yeah, evaporated milk, exactly.
We'll throw a rock in there, make it feel heavy.
The main thing to take away from this is if you have money sitting in a jar or sitting in your mattress, it's not staying the same. It is constantly losing value. We want to have money on hand. We want to have that 4 to 6 months because, God forbid something happens, we need something to fall back on. But we don't want to have too much because that hurts us long term, right? And then flip side of the coin, what's working for us, right? Compounding, right? Actually, can I go back real quick? I want to give people a guess. My bad.
That's good.
All right, I'm going to call out something dang. You ready? If I gave you a penny a day, and that penny doubled, and any other penny that it earned doubled. So basically imagine a hydra, right? Like penny, 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 penny. After 30 days, how much money would you have? Just 1 penny, just a whole month.
If you
just
guess
average
even
guess.
close to right, you cheated.
You see the gears moving.
Grow a whole jar of pennies.
You know,
Big jar.
Anyone else want to take a guess?
Sure.
Start with a penny. Day 2, you have 2 pennies. Day 3, you have 4.
Yes.
Day 5, you have 8.
5 million.
It's,
One more.
it's millions of dollars.
5 million.
Yeah, exactly.
5.368 to be exact.
It's a little fun example of just, again, the power of compounding, right? What is compounding? We want money that we put in, whatever that money earns, we want that money to start earning for us as well, right? We want money working for us, and its earnings to earn, and just build it.
So
right?
imagine a snowball. Imagine we're standing on top of those bleachers. I know Ithaca gets a lot of snow, so at some point you're not going to see the bleachers. It's just going to look like an amazingly ridiculous steep hill that maybe someone shouldn't be sledding down, but does. I don't know. But if you do, invite me, please. So imagine we go to the top. The hill is our lifetime, right? Get a little,
Metaphor.
philosophical here, but just bear with me. So top of the slope is our beginning point. We have 0. We have nothing. Think of money. Snow is money. We take a snowball, put a little bit together, and make ourselves a baseball-sized snowball. That's our initial deposit, our initial amount of money. The hill, again, is your lifetime, right? So say every row is a year. As you roll the ball down the hill, and it's always easier to roll the ball down a hill than up a hill, aka time does not stop. Every time it rolls, it picks up snow around the entire circumference. And every time that happens, it exponentially gets bigger because your circumference is getting bigger, right? It's picking up literally the entire surface area of the snowball.
More and more so.
Take that concept, and now imagine you have Chase and me on the side, shoveling the snow and throwing it onto the ball every single second as you're rolling it. So you're exponentially taking something that already has exponential growth, and you're adding fuel to it. That's compounding. In the example we gave before with the pennies, you're not going to double your money every day. It's just, anyone's telling you that run really far away because they're stealing it. But you could double it every 10 years. That's very reasonable, right? That's about a 6.5% return. The stock market has issued a 10% return, right? So that's more like 6 years-ish. The point is that, everyone has a different runway, has a different goal. But the 2 biggest and most critical components to your success financially are going to be embracing compounding and continuing to roll that ball and add snow whenever you can. Because once it gets going, it's impossible to stop. And then at some point later in life, you're done rolling the ball down because you have more than enough snow. You don't need to have the world's largest snowman. And you just start eating the snow or picking it off and giving it to someone else to roll their ball, right? Because the ball actually will keep rolling, whether you want it to or not. That's the point. And you can afford to take snow off of it and do whatever you want. Wasteful or purposeful, doesn't matter. You can do it, and it doesn't impact your ability, because it's just going to keep accumulating more snow. So that's an overly simplified way to think about it, but the math doesn't lie. It really doesn't.
Don't eat the yellow snow.
What?
I said don't eat the yellow snow. When you said eat the snow,
I'm colorblind, I'm gonna need some help.
So again, just showing you guys in comparison, right? If I took $1 back in 1974, I did two things with it. One, kept it in my mattress, never even touched it. Or two, put it in the stock market. The mattress would be worth 16 cents today. The stock market dollar would be worth 154. That's the bottom line. Just, we need people to start understanding that there's two different sides to it, right? Everyone knows about how money can earn in the market and it gets exposure, but this is the thing that they forget about all the time, right? So you have these great deals and they're like, oh my gosh, I have $100,000 sitting in my checking account or my savings account. That's bad, right? So just think about nest egg, 4 to 6 months. Anything afterwards, unless you have something big coming, I'd probably start looking at getting into that exposure, having to go that way. Real life example, right? So we have right here, quick savings versus no savings. So let me just break it down. It's the one little analytical piece, but it's telling. We took the average Cornell graduate, earns around 70,000, right? If their income and their expenses and everything just gradually increase, we made some assumptions. The left-hand side is the person who saves into their 401k, around 5%, and saves whatever they can save after their salary, right? So they account for savings. On the right-hand side, we have the guy who thinks, you know, just putting into my 401k is enough. That's me saving. We see the difference here. One, person on the left has $6 million come retirement. Person on the right has $2 million. The one thing to note here too, we just talked about it, inflation. This is the actual representation. Today, if someone's retiring, $2 million will get them really, really far. They will probably live a very nice retirement life and be comfortable. $2 million for my generation over in 2060 will get them about 10 years. $2 million in 40 years is not going to be the same value of $2 million today. That's what that inflation, that little scary value of money goes down, is what we have to realize. We need money working for us. We have to earn more and save more than our parents and our grandparents.
Do you see the slope? The slope is changing, right? It's going steeper, right? We call that eventually it's parabolic, which means straight up.
That'd be awesome.
That's the goal. That's the compounding, right? I know we were going down the hill rolling the ball, but that's the ball size. That's literally compounding in action. And we're not assuming that you're a gazillionaire. I use the gazillion word because it's so realistic, right? I've used it a lot today. We're assuming you're putting away about $1,000 a month, right, in perpetuity, and then as you're able to increase. But I think our peak on the next page will show you, right? We're
By the
putting
time you
away,
get to 45, you're a millionaire.
so you're putting away not even $3,000 a month. But you've been doing this, right? You started at $1,000 a month, and as you made more money, and because going back to that budget slide, right, you knew kind of where the money was going roughly, and you adjusted your lifestyle upwards because you enjoyed the more money that you're earning, but you also put a little bit more away in tandem. You never got out over your skis. You just kept putting a little bit more away. You never sacrificed too much because you were constantly doing it. I don't need to preach discipline to this room. I think you all know that the benefit of discipline when you're working with your students. It's the same thing in finance. It's just chipping away and focusing on the small things and making sure that you stay disciplined and stay consistent.
One thing to quickly note too, $1,000 is an ambitious goal, right, per month, right? We made those assumptions for assuming some successful people in the graduates and they're maybe by the time they're 40s, 50s, they can play some catch up, right? So just giving the over average representation. But the idea is also in one of the tools that we're going to give them and you guys, there's what we call a compounding calculator, right? So we'll let you put in, hey, if I start here, if I put $100 a month, and we're assuming 7%, so like the average, what would that actually be by the time I retire? So that's going to be something that you guys are going to be getting, right? It's a cool little, just have fun with it. If I put this month away, how much, you can actually see how it will grow. So that's in one of the tools that we give. But saving, the impact, millionaire by 45. Not saving, you're sitting there right around 300,000. I'm going to reaffirm for all of us, our Ivy League graduate educated people, just reaffirm, $1 million is bigger than 300,000. Okay, that's just want to really drive that home, right? All right, 2 of 3 is done. We have one more. We're on to our next one, right? The 3 or 4 recommendation: grow a Roth IRA. And we're going to get a recap here in a second on all the other steps, but this is number 3. We talked about the really short midterm.
Let me
Wait.
just mention one thing. We're specifically mentioning a Roth IRA. There are lots of different retirement accounts. So you have 403Bs, you have a Roth 403B, regular 403B. If you work in the private sector, there's a 401k, a Roth 401k. You can also have an IRA, a Roth IRA. There's a lot of options out there, and they're all good. Some are better than others. We're specifically targeting the Roth because we sent out a survey before the presentation with the students, and that was overwhelmingly one of the key concepts that they wanted us to talk about. So just to be mindful, a Roth IRA is actually phenomenal, and we'll talk more about it, but the idea is that, actually just today I was reading something, or listening on the way up. I was not reading while I was driving. And there's a lot of talk about starting to phase out the Roth. Phase it out based on either income limits, or changing the rules a little bit so that they're not necessarily allowed in retirement plans from your employee, which they are now. And the reason for that is simple. The government is seeing that this is a little bit too good of a deal, and they're not getting enough of their tax money back, because a Roth is one of those where you pay the tax now, and the money goes tax-free forever.
That's a good segue into the next slide. So, a little quick metaphor to help drive home the point of what is the Roth IRA, what's the benefit? Anyone have a guess why we included this picture? And it is. No, so I was thinking about the best way to kind of drive home the fact of what are the benefits of this Roth. We were mentioning tax-free, right? Everyone here has been athletes, right? And everyone who's going to be coming in tomorrow are athletes. How many of us throughout our athletic career have battled with injuries, right? You definitely have. If I told you that we could go back to when you first started playing sports, 3rd grade, 4th grade, I gave you one injury right then, and then for the rest of your career, you never got an injury again. How many people would take that deal? I would definitely take that deal. That's the simple way of thinking about what is a Roth IRA. You pay tax right at the front, and then you never have to worry about it again, right? So we'll break it down. So next slide. Quick recap, we talked about it. Liquid strategies, cash, our emergency fund, right? We want that savings, that nest egg, something to fall back on. 2, midterm, the wealth investment strategy, right? Money that's in the market, it's working for us, but we can touch it and access it at any time. And this last one we're talking about, retirement strategies. The reason it's retirement, your 401ks, your IRAs, whatever all those terms we're throwing out, a lot of them have the detail that you cannot touch them until the age of 59 and a half. Now, worst case scenario, let's say you really need the money, you could get it, but there's penalties. 10% penalty plus income tax, it's not worth it. Whenever we put money into this account, we think long-term, we think retirement. It's the name of the game, it's for. Let's talk real quickly about Roth IRA. Go back.
Oh.
My bad. I wanted to give it real quick.
Sorry.
That's a good one, it's free money. We'll talk about that.
I just wanted to see the effects again.
Roth IRA versus company 401k. Quick rundown, right? Your traditional 401k, there's the term traditional, and then there's the term Roth. All it is just a way to represent the benefit of tax. So whenever you hear traditional, think if I make $100,000 today, if I put $20,000 into that traditional, when the time comes time to pay the government, they'll view me as an $80,000 income earner. That's the benefit. You're putting money away, hiding it from everyone, and you lower your current taxable income bracket. Traditional, lower your current taxable income bracket. Just think about when you pay taxes, there are different ranges, right? If you earn $50,000, you pay 22%. If you're at 80, you're paying 24. 120, you're paying 25, 26. It increases, right? So if you're right near that threshold, imagine if you could put enough money away to put yourself in a lower bracket. You save 2%, 3%, whatever it is, right there. That's the benefit of traditional, lowering your current taxable income bracket. Now, for our athletes who are arguably and hopefully going to be in the lowest income bracket of their lives, there's no big benefit to really putting in traditional at this time, right? The flip side of the coin is Roth. Anything you get put into it, taxed immediately. Then it grows tax-free. Any money that you take out of it is tax-free as well. Think about when we have retirement. If we had $1 million in that Roth and $1 million in that traditional, you wanted to live off $100,000, imagine we could take $15.50 from each. When it came time to pay taxes, because you always pay taxes, this has already been taxed. The government would view you as a $50,000 income earner. You're taxed as a $50,000 income earner. Lower threshold. Traditional lowers your current taxable income bracket. Roth lowers your retirement taxable income bracket. One other major benefit is this, and we talked about it, right? Save the money, push the tax away, never worry about it again. Money doubles, Tanny said it, every 10 years on average. If I put in $10,000 as a 25-year-old, by the time I retire, it's 160. 10 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 80, 80, 160. Would you rather pay tax on the $10,000 today or all of the 160 that it's grown into? Get the injury out of the way and protect it in the long run. That's the power of Roth. That's why we're stressing it, that's why we're teaching and giving that over explanation on really what it is. Because it's a great benefit, and Danny was even saying that the government's noticing how great a benefit it is. Might not be available in 5 years, 10 years. So
You know
take
what's the
advantage.
best benefit, Chase?
What is it?
Free money. I had to do it. Free money. That's even a better benefit. And you know how you get free money? You're all getting it now through the 403B. Cornell's contributing. Free money. So in your situation, we don't need to tell you because I think Cornell gives it to you no matter what you do, whether you put money in or not. But that's not always the case with employers. Very often there's a match up to a certain amount. Typically it's around 3%. So what you have to do if you're an employee is you got to put in at least 6 to 8% to be able to get the maximum match. So going back to that forced savings plan and deciding on Roth versus regular, at the end of the day, whether you do Roth or regular, doesn't matter. Just do it because you're getting extra snow on that snowball literally for free. The only thing in finance that I can tell you is free is the employer match. It's the only thing I can tell you is truly a free lunch. And I guess if you want to push back on me, the deal with the devil is you got to work for the employer. But you're going to do it anyway. So, especially if you're evaluating job opportunities, it's huge. I don't think it's said enough, but Cornell does a phenomenal job. Phenomenal. I know the 403Bs are at Fidelity. We work with a lot of clients at Cornell with that. And the amount of money that we're seeing coming in just from Cornell's contributions are just tremendous. They make a huge difference. So for the students, at least we're going to talk about when you're evaluating employer options, right? You have a couple hopefully on the table. Look into the benefits because they really do make a big difference. Oh, yep.
All right, time-wise, also just keeping us up on track. We're right now around 15 minutes left. 50, a little close to 50. So,
I think we're going to rush it.
rush it.
We're going to rush it. We're going to do this in like 5 or 6.
All right, so we're going to go a little bit faster. Plus, we'll also touch base on like mortgages and child planning for FAFSA, which isn't going to be included in the students. So we have to go a little bit faster.
I want to leave some time for questions because I'm sure there's going to be a couple of random that you've been holding on to. And you just don't want to, of course, ruin our mojo because it's just so good, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. So I'm going to rip through just some basics on investing.
Rip through.
Just this could be a whole presentation on its own, but I think it's important to just have a few nuggets to take out of here. Is it diversification? Yeah, diversification. So you can go out and you can go find the next Tesla or Apple and put all your money into it. God bless you. If you find it and you know you're right 40 years later, 30 years, however long it takes, kudos to you. But that's a sucker's game. We all like to have, I don't say we all, but most people like to go once in a while to a casino, to a racetrack, and put a few dollars on a pony, as they say. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We are all humans. We like to yell and scream. And, I think now we actually may even be able to bet on football games, which was kind of like a unique situation compared to before. But bottom line is we all like a little bit of action, right? There's nothing wrong with that. However, you don't want to do that with the core money. That is the absolute horrible approach because the odds are so much against you. You want to be diversified. You want to take an approach kind of like a battleship, right? Or assembling a football team. How many people are on a football team?
Well, how many on a roster or how many play?
Both. Oh, well,
We
no.
have, so we
How
have
many
like
are on a
11
roster?
playing. We have 11 playing. We have 120 just ready to go.
And how many staff are roughly? How many coaching staff?
10.
10?
10?
10 on average.
All right, so you got 100. What would you say?
120. Well, so all the super seniors probably 140 right
So
now.
about 140 to 150 people in the room are considered the football team, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it. And 11 play?
Yeah.
That's good diversification. Someone gets hurt, you need a backup, right? Or a certain play you're gonna run. Maybe there's a specific player that fits the bill better than someone else. It's not a perfect analogy, but I'm trying to stretch it a little bit. The bottom line is you want to have the right player for any play. And Unlike football where you're capped at 11 on the field, investing you're not capped, right? Unlike those ponies I was discussing where there may be 10 racing. If you bet on all 10, you're going to lose money. Like literally mathematically, they don't let you do that, right? Otherwise, everyone would just bet on all 10 and you make a dollar and walk away. The investment world, you can bet on all 10. You can invest in all 150 of the football team. There's nothing against it. And most people can't do that because it goes against their human nature. They say, no, I see this and that on TV. I use this product. And I just say, don't fight that. Embrace it and have a little side bucket if you have some extra money and go bet on those companies that you really like. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. But with the main corpus, right, your 403B, your 4 savings plans, be diversified. Because what this chart shows is that you never know which group or which player is going to be the winner on any given day. But you got to have them all on your team.
Just 2 quick things to look at. For instance, you were saying you don't know which one's going to win. Commodities was the lowest performing here. Next year, literally next year, is the highest performer. Same with cash over there. The yellow box, boom, who's the biggest over there. You never know which one's going to be the best performer, so you get exposed to all of them. Real life scenario, if, for instance, a lot of people are just exposed to the S&P 500, you're exposed to 1, maybe 2 of these boxes. It's tough to, and that's a whole other conversation, I have to talk with anyone, but diversify where your money is. Get into all the different places. S&P 500, you get 500 companies, but at the end of the day, they're all relatively very similar. They're in that one category. Diversify more.
It's also important to note that it's not always so convenient that the bottom one is the next top one, because then everyone would just do that, right? That's a contrarian play. And I'm going to give you a real life example of why you don't want to be just a contrarian. If 5 people refuse to stand in front of a train that's going at 100 miles per hour down the train track, you don't want to be the contrarian, right? That doesn't make any sense, right? Clearly those 5 people understand you're going to get creamed. So it's not as simple as just saying, oh, I'm going to do the opposite of everyone else. It doesn't work like that.
Let's keep going.
So how to invest, we'll just talk for like 2 seconds about different types of investment, right? You have individual bonds. So those are fixed income. Those are IOUs from a company. And they're saying, please lend me money. So Cornell, for example, issues bonds. Cornell may need a capital improvement. Maybe they want to redo the field or something. So they raise money and they say, you have no upside of Cornell University. You literally are not participating in our profits, but we're going to pay you X% per year for your money until we pay you back. Thank you very much. That's a bond. Individual securities, the Apples and Teslas, pick any exciting company, pick any dud out there, it doesn't matter, right? Individual company where you're a shareholder, you have a right to your percentage or pro rata of their business, their profits or their losses, and it's publicly traded. So, they don't always trade exactly for what they're worth. They have projected values, they have other views, right? Tesla is a company that is trading more expensive, or its market cap is actually worth more than all the US car companies combined. That's really hard to break down and say, does that make sense or not? But clearly the market is seeing something that everyone else isn't. They're looking at it as not a car company. But you could go out and buy individual companies. Or you can have an exchange traded or mutual fund, which baskets a bunch of companies together based on a theme, based on a sector, based on an index. There are literally countless ways to do it, but these are baskets. And then lastly is private securities. The idea that maybe your neighbor has a startup company that's going to revolutionize the world. That's a private company. Or it could be the largest, I don't know of any private companies at the moment in Cornell area, but I'm sure there are plenty of really brilliant, very successful companies in the area spawned from Cornell that are privately owned. Right? They don't have, maybe they have some shareholders and that's where you become an investor, but they're not in the public markets. They're not trading on the stock exchange. So there's lots of different ways to access investments. There's no right or wrong answer to any of them. They're all individualized. And the idea is that over time, as you accumulate those stocks in your drawer, you accumulate different types of stocks for different purposes. And at the end of the day, you have a beautiful, organized drawer.
How it pertains to us, right? We just talked on the last slide, that colorful chart, diversification. If you wanted to buy a bunch of individual stocks, probably be pretty expensive. Apple and Amazon are selling for $200 plus, so if you wanted to get individual stocks, you'd have to come up with all those different payments. Exchange trade funds, ETFs, is how more people refer to them, ETFs and mutual funds. You can get the average return over 50, 100 different stocks, and it's a lot cheaper. You're gonna get an ETF for like $5. You can get exposed to 50 companies all at once. If you want diversification, doing it cost effectively, look into ETFs and mutual funds. That'll help you diversify what we just talked about.
And those are, ETFs and mutual funds are the predominant ones in your 403Bs when you look. You know, it's a mix and match in there, depending on how you're allocated. So a couple more slides, just real quick. One more on just investing, and then we're gonna move on to just insurance for a moment, and then we're done.
Currently right now, so just again, conscious of time, we're right at that little hour mark. I know I want to be conscious of everyone's time. The quick rundown is timing the market, we alluded to it multiple times. If you missed 5 days out of 20 years of big trading days, your whole return goes down by half. 15 days, a fourth, or you're negative if you just miss 1 month out of 20 years of trading. Have money in the market, don't try to move it out and time it and everything like that, because you miss a couple days, it has a big effect.
The best thing you can do is just keep chipping away, ignoring what's happening in the world, right? We just went through a very polarizing political season. The market doesn't care who the president is. They don't care who the president's gonna be. Ignore all that stuff. You know, enjoy it and talk to your friends and whatever, but when it comes to investing, horse blinders. It's all noise. It's all theatrics. At the end of the day, just keep putting away like you are in your 403B twice a month. Just keep doing it. That's the proven method, and it works.
The last slide, and we won't go into the detail of it all, I'll just explain it all on this one. 4.4, locking in their insurability status. It's the one thing that's probably going to get the most pushback, but it's life insurance, right? At no point do these kids need life insurance. The whole point of it is protecting your loved ones, protecting the people who depend on you, right? But I've had countless conversations already in these first 2 years where people have dealt with health problems, have dealt with just deterioration of health. They're not D1 athletes anymore, and all of a sudden, by age 30, they blink and have a little bit of a beer gut and everything else like that. They're lower health, right? So the idea is life insurance is one of the only things that's tied to your health. And if you can lock in your health status as a D1 athlete now, it creates a seatbelt long term. I'll give you an example. Worst case scenario. I had a 28-year-old person. He was diagnosed with MS. Cured, they got it off him. He's projected to live to 85, live a nice long life. He has that one red flag on his balance sheet, can never get life insurance again for the rest of his life. Never, I'm not talking about, oh, it's gonna be really expensive. Never. That's worst case scenario. And 3 years earlier, he could have most likely gotten the best health rating and had that option for 20 years. To convert it, to get permanent, and he would have had that option. Right now, again, giving you a real life scenario, I right now currently have $1 million in term. I'm paying $30 a month for it. That's one night out in New York City. That's the way I think about it. I just don't go out one night and don't spend money on a couple beers and I'm good, you know? And the idea is, God forbid something happens to me. If I get diagnosed with cancer tomorrow, I can convert that $1 million to permanent at the best health rating at any time, no matter what they say. It's a seatbelt. To protect, even if my health goes down by three little notches and it becomes twice as expensive. Doesn't matter. I've locked in the best health rating. It's something that, again, just thinking long term, so inexpensive for kids these days. It's $30 a month. It's just, again, our job is to think worst case. Hopefully it happens to less than 0% of them in here, but if it does, it's a good thing to have.